Hi, it's Kristi Piehl, host of the Flip Your Script podcast. And apparently, my cat Waldo, named after Ralph Waldo Emerson, is joining us today too. We wanted to give you a little behind the scenes look at how we do the Flip Your Script podcast and the bonus episode. So, at the end of every year, we kind of compile some of the best insight, the best advice that our guests have given us over the course of the year. And this last year in 2022, we asked everyone a question at the end of their episode that hasn't, been put out there yet. And we put that whole episode together and we recorded it all from where we typically record our episodes, which is at the Media Minefield offices in Minnesota. So here you go. Here's a behind the scenes look at how we did the end of the year episode. Enjoy.
Happy New Year! It's Kristi Piehl. Welcome to a special Flip Your Script end of the year bonus episode. It's the end of 2022 and the beginning of a new chapter in all our stories. A new year, a time of reflection, goal setting, and gratitude. First of all, thank you for listening and being part of the Flip Your Script community. We've reached tens of thousands of people in more than 90 countries. You continue to remind us there's value in sharing authentic, engaging stories. Personally, these guests and stories I've had the privilege of talking with have positively impacted many areas of my life. I'm on this journey with you, learning, sharing stories, and working to be better. And today, you get something special, new content and insight from some Flip Your Script favorites from the last year. So here's how we pulled it off. After our recordings, I'd ask the guest another question specifically for this episode. We then combined some of the most powerful answers and insights with snippets from some of the most popular guests of the year. And when we did that, we saw a few themes emerge that will help motivate you and remind you you're capable of more than you think in the new year. Don't worry, I'll introduce you to each guest, give you their episode number in case you want to go back and hear their full story. And it wouldn't be a Flip Your Script episode without some powerful quotes. And I've been saving a few all year to share with you today. Okay, let's start with habits. Many of us at this time of year think specifically about starting something or stopping something. And in episode 81, I asked Dr. Stanley Andrisse his perspective about habits.
Advice for folks who would like to make change. I would have to lean on, our model within our organization is to find an accountability partner. So we believe in this support system network. That's what I kind of mentioned in the episode about a lot of people didn't have that support system. So finding this structured support system. But really what we do is a lot of accountability. So we put people around you that helps you stay accountable. So we help you design the plan. And then we put people around you that are checking in to say, you said you were going to do this week. Did you do it? You were supposed to reach out to this university. How did that go? So my advice would be, after you've decided what it is that you want to change, find an accountability partner and really lean on that person and don't be, a lot of us, it's hard to take constructive feedback. Find somebody that's not just going to be gentle to you and say, well, okay, you didn't do it this week, but next week you could do it, or so find somebody that's really going to hold you accountable. And I mean, that is just instrumentally, helpful. That's what a good fitness coach, that's really what they're doing. They're holding you accountable to making sure you get into the gym every week. So you can have that for relationships. You can have that for your relationship with your children, relationship with your significant other. You can have that for career wise. So I would say to find that accountability partner, that person that will hold you accountable to reaching that goal or change that you're seeking.
It's great advice any time of the year, right? Especially right now as we think about the new year. Well, the goal right now many people have is about their wellness. Fitmess podcasters Jeremy Grater and Zach Tucker, who have collectively lost a lot of weight and helped others get healthy, they were on episode 90. And I asked them what advice they'd have for folks with the New Year's resolution to lose weight.
I guess my first tip would be don't necessarily wait for January 1st. Start right now. Whatever it is that you want, whatever goal you have that you want to achieve, why not right now? Why would you wait until January 1st or Monday, right? If it's a goal that you want, start right now.
You stole my line, but I'll put a different tweak on it. Don't wait for motivation. So many times I'm in different Facebook groups or I see it online. I'm waiting for the motivation to hit the gym. I'm waiting for the motivation to eat better. Motivation doesn't knock on your door. You build it with your bare hands through blood, sweat, and tears. And it starts with not waiting to get motivated, but putting the shoes on and driving or walking to the gym or going for the walk and just deciding I'm the person that's going to go for a walk every day until that's not enough and I need to do more. I'm the person that's going to go join that CrossFit gym down the street because it's worth investing in myself to get myself better. Motivation will not come. If you don't build it, you'll never have it. Start with the action that it takes to get you on the path to your goals. And then the motivation becomes the fact that it is now a habit and is just a part of your daily life.
That advice probably resonates with a lot of you. Well, the change Juliana Brandt made that helped her flip her script and put her in position to become a published author hinged on a decision she made to change her life. Here is a bit of our conversation that we recorded after her episode, and that one is episode number 107 if you want to listen to more of Juliana's story. As we think about the end of the year, as we think about the new beginnings, you did this in your life. You were living somewhere, you weren't in a great, happy space. You flipped your script kind of dramatically, and it took a long time to do. It wasn't an overnight, like I'm going to lose 10 pounds and it's a month later. I mean, you did this long, your, New Year's resolution was it took a long time to get there.
It was long. Yes.
What advice do you have for people that are sitting there going, all right, it's the beginning of the year. Maybe it's time I should finally do the thing that I know I should be doing that I haven't been brave enough to do?
Yeah. My advice would be to really try to manifest whatever that change would be by speaking it out loud very bravely instead of, especially if it's a change that you want to make that you've been holding tight inside of yourself. If you haven't been brave enough to share that change or that dream with someone else, find somebody to talk to and to share it with. I think when we are able to actually speak things out loud that we have maybe been scared to talk about, that helps manifest it into the universe and help lend us the bravery that we need. So find somebody that can help you. I know for me, when I made those changes, when I finally talked with people, they lent me the strength to make those changes. So find somebody who can lend you the strength to make those changes.
Great advice. And some of those people might say, how could I help you make that happen? And when you have people coming alongside you to help, then it's not quite so daunting. Over the past year, some of our guests have shared openly about some dramatic and painful changes they had to make because their lives were in danger. Like Randi Neal. She flipped her script from a meth addict to a mental health advocate. She shared her powerful story in episode 102.
It's part of who I am. How can people know me today and not know what made me who I am, right? Or what experiences I've been through in my life that have made me as tough as I am. People tell me all the time, Randi, you're so amazing, or like, you're the best on the team. And, what drives you and what motivates you? And like, how do you work so hard and all of these things? And it's like, that's what made me how I am. So in order for people to really know me, they have to know the bad parts about me too, right? You can't just know the good. And so I think that I got the most comfortable sharing over the last 18 months because, first of all, I was sharing my story more so for myself than others. It started with the accountability when it comes to me being sober from drinking, right? It was like 30 days sober, snap my photo, like today's the day, and then when I started to see that, people were being super supportive and, understanding that, don't judge a book by its cover. You have no idea, what struggles somebody's going through or, what trauma they've lived in their life. It just gave me more power to be like, to get to know who I am, to understand maybe why I am the way that I am. You have to understand or know those parts of me too.
Making that choice for Randi, boy, it was so much easier than making the change. And that's true for all different types of changes. In episode 100, which was a special episode, Kate Jayden told us all about the incredible choice she made to run 100 marathons in 100 days. It's an incredible testament to endurance and what she credits as the key to making a resolution a reality. She says it's just discipline.
And one of the things that I talk about when I deliver some of my talks is the concept that you can do all the goal setting that you like. You can have all of the motivation and turn that into discipline and all of these things and consistency. But the problem is you have to find something that drives you to want to achieve something first. And then you have to overcome the fear of failure. Fear is often born out of when we look at achieving goals and achieving our best. Why do people not make career changes? Because they're scared they're going to fail. Why do people not make the attempt to achieve something like, if we're talking triathlon, going from middle distance to a full iron distance? It's because they're too scared that they're going to fail. And it's only when you embrace the possibility that you might fail or you might not achieve it first time, more to the point, that you then say, okay, that's possible. But it's only when you take those risks as well. So the idea of risk taking and facing fear and the idea of how that interacts with potential failure, I think once you get past that fear, then you can start to achieve these things that you never thought possible. And so breaking all that down into a process, it becomes quite simple for me. You can create a plan to make things achievable. You turn up day in, day out, you do the work. You make these things. Actually, this is where the interaction between motivation and discipline comes in. And social media is an absolute terror for this. I don't know how you're so motivated. We talk about motivation on social media, but the reality is I'm the first person to say to people, I am not motivated. I'm just very disciplined. So you find the motivation to start something and that's your why, but turning up every day and how, that's the discipline and the consistency. And that's the part that we don't get up every day and brush our teeth and get dressed because we're motivated to do that. We do it because we're disciplined and it's part of our routine and it's the things that we have to do as part of day-to-day life.
100 marathons. I still can't imagine it. I have to be honest with you. I tried to train for one this last summer and I quit after my 10-mile training day. I did the 10 miles, but I just didn't like it. So I moved on to a different fitness goal. Gavin Kaysen talked a lot about goals and how to change them. And I do think that learning from him helped me have the freedom to walk away from my marathon training. I talked to Gavin in episode 85, and I asked him to go into a little more detail for us. Gavin is an award-winning chef and restaurateur.
When I write my goals, I write them every year, and I create basically 3 categories. One is about my health and my fitness, so health and wellness. That's a really important category because it not only speaks on your physical side of things, but also your mental capacity and how you can grow. And then I have my professional goals, and I keep that very specific as to how do I want to see myself and the company grow as a company together, and what does that look like? And then I have my personal goals, and those are my very, very deep secret goals that I want to see myself get better at certain things that, I might not tell everybody about, but I do actually end up sharing those with my management team. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I sat down with everybody and I said, I want you to think of your goals and I want you to talk to me about them. And everybody that's come to me to tell me their goals, I'm happy to tell them all of mine. So it's usually about 3 to 5 goals per category, but health and wellness, my professional and my personal goals.
And if partway through the year, something changes, if there's a health goal and you got sick or you broke your leg or something, are you flexible enough to change them, or do you stick with them for 12 straight months?
No, I'll change them and I'll go back to them probably 3 or 4 times throughout the year to see if I've achieved one of them. And if I've achieved it, I'll delete it and add a new one because there's still time. So yeah, I mean, I'm certainly flexible in that goal. And I think that I've learned throughout, I'm a very goal-orientated person, as you can see and imagine. But I've learned that when you make the goals for yourself, it sometimes can do more harm than good if you're not flexible with that, because life is not a straight line and neither are your goals. So, you might get bumped off it here and there, but you got to continue to keep going after it.
Like Gavin, a lot of guests shared their advice. I found a quote about advice that really resonated with me, and I've been saving it to share in this bonus episode. It's from Ann Lander. If you haven't heard of her, she's the queen of advice. In 1955, she began writing the Ask Ann Landers column in newspapers where she would answer people's questions. She did this for almost 50 years, and at its height, her readership was 90 million people. Here's what Ann said. If I were asked to give what I consider the single most useful bit of advice for all humanity, it would be this. Expect trouble as an inevitable part of life, and when it comes, hold your head high. Look it squarely in the eye and say, I will be bigger than you. You cannot defeat me. Then repeat yourself the most comforting words of all. This too will pass. It is so true, and even though she wrote that decades ago, it really resonates. Like Kev the plumber, remember Kev? Well, he knows that advice really well. In episode 101, he talked about his epic flip your script story. He was known as the singing plumber. That is until he sang in the bathroom of a record producer's house and landed a record deal. His life story is the focus of a movie that is now in pre-production. I've recently communicated again with Kev, and he's going to come back on the podcast when we can talk more about the project. So I thought it was just a good idea to bring a little of Kev back in. Before we take the break, here's some of Kev singing.
Let's dance, put on your red shoes and dance the blues. Let's dance the songs that playing on the radio. Let's sway while color lights up your face. Let's sway through the crowd to an empty space. And if you say run, I'll run to you. And if you say hide, we'll hide. Because my love for you will break my heart in two. If you should fall into my arms and tremble like a flower.
Flip Your Script is produced by Media Minefield, an agency specializing in earned, owned, and paid media. With clients all over North America, Media Minefield was founded on the belief every story has value, and the power of a story is unlocked when it's shared. Oh yeah, Media Minefield's my favorite agency because I started it in 2010 when my 12-year television news career ended. I won some Emmy Awards, got to tell some incredible stories, met some amazing people, and then I was laid off. And that's enough of my Flip Your Script story. You can hear it and others by subscribing to the podcast. And if you like what you hear, don't forget to rate and review. And now back to today's guest. Welcome back to our special Flip Your Script year-end episode. For many people, to fully move forward with goals in the future requires an honest look back at the past. What stories from the past are negatively impacting the present and the future? Well, I asked Phil Terrill about this. He was featured in episode 96. So, Phil, when you think about a new start, is it important that people take a look back on some things that maybe they need to work on? Or can they make a new start and put that in the past? What's your perspective?
Yeah, I think they can put it in the past. For me though, I think it's important that we do look back so we know exactly what we went through, that it's still important, that it's a part of us no matter what. And then we can use that moving forward to think about, well, what is that new direction I might want to go, right? I might want to pivot and do something completely different, reimagine myself, my life, my entire existence to be maybe something even more, or maybe I want to be a force multiplier. And so that might require me to think and act and do things differently. And so having that type of resolution going into a new year could be very powerful to sort of become a catalyst for the change they want to see in their lives ahead. So,
like Phil, many of our guests shared how they processed their pasts. Some talked about a therapist that they had been seeing or loved ones they were talking with who helped them through the pain. Over the past 12 months, we've had guests from multiple countries, a variety of lived experiences, people of different ages, genders, races, political persuasions, sexual orientations, and everyone agrees on one thing. There is power when a story is shared because it can help someone else. The best example, as I reflect over the past year, is from John Kriesel. He described it in episode 111. He lost both his legs in the war and now travels the country sharing his story.
And so I knew that by sharing my story, I could positively impact people and share them, teach them the things that I've learned without them having to go through what I did. But it still was tough. And so at those parts, I've always used humor to lighten uncomfortable situations. And then during speeches, I could see that, okay, it's very heavy now. And even I'd be uncomfortable. So I'd toss in a joke more to make me relax. And then I'd see that the audience then kind of had a sigh of relief and they'd laugh and relax too. And I thought maybe we're onto something here, because if I just told the story, yes, it's impactful. And again, like I said, it's crazy that I went through it. I don't think it's going to be able to inspire people or have them relate to it if I just tell that, because everyone on this podcast, they're not going to hit an IED and lose their legs and two of their friends. Nobody. That's one of the few guarantees I can give. The other guarantee is that we're all going to go through adversity in our life. It doesn't matter what type of, and I don't want people to say, have an awful day at work, or let's say they got laid off. They weren't meeting their sales goals or whatever it was. Have that happen and say, well, at least I have two legs. At least I didn't get blown up in Iraq. No, I want people to be able to look at whatever adversity they're going through and focus on the point that having a positive attitude and a sense of humor, if it got me through what it got me through, then absolutely it can get anybody through anything. And that's really what I try to teach, is just how I went through it. And there's no one size fits all. It's not going to work for everyone, but maybe they can take bits and pieces of what I've been through and how I got through it and apply that to their day-to-day life and maybe have a different perspective. And so that's kind of where I'm at with the humor thing too. And that's, I think, what afterwards people came back, they're like, I felt guilty laughing. And I'm like, that's all right. But they see me up there telling it, and I'm the one that went through it. So they're like, well, if he thinks it's funny or if he jokes about it, then I suppose we can chuckle a bit too. And it allows them to let their guard down and be inspired by the story.
Whenever people talk about story, I get excited. Well, whether it takes the form of health or wellness or breaking free from a person or substance that's causing you harm, everyone, whether they admit it or not, wants to be better or do better. Guest after guest talked about how critical it is to keep learning and stay curious, and how much that helped them flip their own script. Sharon McMahon, better known as Sharon Says So on social media, said this when I asked her if her work teaching people online about the government and world affairs will ever be done.
No, absolutely not. No. As long as the world keeps turning, there will be things to talk about. Like as a government teacher who, I worked as a classroom teacher for 12 years. There was a never ending stream of things to talk about for many hours a day. Right. There was never a time where it was like, well, guys, we have learned all the things. We have finished all the books. We have learned everybody from history. And all the world leaders as well. No, there will always be more to learn. And that's part of what's exciting, right? Is I find it very exciting to learn new things. My brain really enjoys learning new things. Like that is a huge source of enjoyment for me, is like, oh, I love knowing that. I really love knowing that. Like that is, I get like a little thrill from that. So the idea that we will never run out of things to learn about, never run out of things to talk about, I find that tremendously exciting and comforting.
If you're not following Sharon Says So on social media, I encourage you, because you're going to be learning something from her every time she posts. And learning is such a great mindset and resolution for all of us every day, every month, every year. Keep learning. Growth happens in conjunction with action. If you want to have a different result, you have to take a different action. Here's what well-known author Simon Sinek says about getting started. It doesn't matter if the path we start down and the path we end on are the same, as long as we start down a path. And listeners, I thank you for being on this path with us. You continue to surprise me. You've listened to us in almost 100 countries, and you continue to tell your friends about this podcast. I'm so grateful. And how about our guests? People who say yes to authentically sharing their story with vulnerability and honesty. And as our faithful listeners know, each episode ends with me asking the guest for a quote that has helped them as they flipped their script. For the first time since we started this podcast several years ago, the majority of our guests shared a quote of their own, something they created or adapted or rewrote that speaks to them. However, some of our guests shared a quote from a famous book or person. 3 of them shared Maya Angelou quotes, and each of the quotes they shared were different. So here's one from 2022 that a guest shared that resonates and is a good reminder going into the new year. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. That advice is so true and so powerful. When I think back about how that quote shows up in real life and how it relates to what people said during the podcast, I go back to episode 82 with Chey Eisenman. She went from driving a cab to having her own successful limo service, and she's driven around some notable people. I knew she had some really good stories, so I asked her to come on the show. She agreed, and then a few days later, she reached back out and asked if it would be okay if she used the opportunity to talk about her real Flip Your Script story. It was the one she hadn't talked about before, the one her online followers and clients didn't know. She said she was a call girl, and in that really poignant episode, she talked about the conversation she had with her mother. People have come up to me and told me how much what her mother said resonated with them. So here's what Chey's conservative Christian mother said when Chey told her about her profession.
She could have said a lot of things, but all she said was, well, perhaps an ordinary life with a few extraordinary moments would be easier than an extraordinary life with no ordinary moments.
Wow.
And I thought, you know what, Mom? Yeah, I think so. I want an ordinary life. I want ordinary friends, ordinary boyfriend, ordinary job. Like, that sounds just absolutely amazing. How do I get that?
I'm going to say part of that again. Perhaps an ordinary life with a few extraordinary moments could be easier than an extraordinary life with no ordinary moments. Boy, that's profound, isn't it? And maybe that's the key to sum up all dreams for the new year. I wish you an ordinary year full of wellness and gratitude, with some extraordinary moments that take your breath away and remind you the power of wonder. For me, those extraordinary moments often come in the outdoors. Here's my favorite quote about that from Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests, in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting for their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. That's the goal, right? To find freedom from what holds you back. It's the goal that many of our guests of the last year talked about, the goal that people spend their whole life searching for. I hope the stories we have shared on the Flip Your Script podcast have empowered you to believe you're capable of more than you think, to discover motivation, to uncover inspiration, and to find the strength to turn the page Stay tuned. We have a lot of great content coming in 2023.